The world is racing towards artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, chatbots that are literally writing sermons, and people even talking about AI becoming conscious, even spiritual. We might even talk about some people that are actually worshiping AI. But what's hype and what's actually happening? Will AI take our jobs? Should parents trust it around their kids? Could it ever become self-aware? And are we forgetting something deeper, something machines could never replicate? I'm Allan CP, and this is The Science Dilemma, a space where we explore the tension between modern science and timeless truth and help the next generation see that faith and reason were never at war. Today, we're joined by one of the top voices in the field, Dr. Robert J. Marks, professor of engineering at Baylor University and director of the Walter Bradley Center for Natural and Artificial Intelligence. He spent over 30 years leading research on AI and speaking out about where it stops short and where intelligent design becomes undeniable. Let's get into it. Dr. Marks, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I think we're going to have fun, Allan.
I'm really excited. This is something that I feel like a second grader, probably actually a 2-year-old when we talk AI, because I'm not a coder. I don't understand too much about engineering. So I think this is a popular topic right now, is can AI become conscious?
Well, first of all, you have to define consciousness. So
Yes.
if you can define consciousness, I can address your question. But
Yeah.
the problem is, I looked around
no
all over
one seems to be able to.
no one seems to be able to define consciousness, and you can't do it in a little sentence. There's a lot of people believe that AI becomes more and more complex. That as AI becomes more and more complex, that you'll magically have an emergence of consciousness. You've
Yes.
heard that, and there's absolutely no evidence of that. But some people believe that's going to happen. AI is going to become a singularity, as smart and creative as human beings, and then there's going to be super intelligence. And there's some people that worship this as a god.
Yeah.
In fact, there is an AI church out in California. Google
Wait,
it.
no
AI
way.
church. Yeah, way.
So it's not,
incredible.
you're not even, that's not like a metaphor. You're not making it up as like
No.
people will worship it. Like people are actually treating it like a entity.
They will, and I'll tell you a story. The first AI church that I'm aware of existed. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. Anthony Lewandowski. He worked for Waymo, which is Google's self-driving car.
This is crazy.
And he was an interesting guy. He was kind of a wonder kid in Silicon Valley, and he started the AI church because he believed that AI was going to be a god. If you go to Ray Kurzweil, he's the one that wrote the book, The Singularity is Near, and you talk to him and you ask him, do you believe in God? He says, not yet.
Oh,
Because he believed, yeah, really, really profound. There's another guy, Yuval Harari, who wrote a book called Homo Deus, and he believes that, well, evolution has taken all it can with human beings and biological, so the next step in evolution is for us to transform this to silicon, and that the silicon now can evolve into the super duper intelligence.
no
Now,
way. From your expertise, would you say that like it won't ever reach that super intelligence at all? Like I know that we can't define consciousness, but or at least we haven't. But are you saying that it won't reach that level of what we would deem to be somewhat conscious or like a human brain?
absolutely not, because
Yeah.
this assumes that AI can write better AI, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a guy named Summer Bringsjord, a colleague of mine from Rensselaer, who proposed something called the Lovelace test. And this is the test of computers for creativity. A computer program will be creative if it does something beyond the intent or explanation of its programmers. Let me say that again, because that's really important. It'll do something beyond the explanation or intent of its programmers. Sometimes you write AI and computer programs. Anybody that's written code knows that sometimes you come out with results that are kind of surprising. But surprising is not that big of a thing, because you can go back and you can look at the code and say, well, I asked it to look at these results and this is what it came up with. I'm surprised this is the result, but nevertheless, there it is. So as of today, nobody has passed this test, which Bringsjord calls the Lovelace test, after the first computer program, Ada Lovelace, in the 19th century. But no computer has passed that test. There has been no computer program that has done anything beyond the intent or explanation of its programmers. You look
Mm,
at these large language models. This was due to a 2017 paper. I think it was called Attention is All You Need. And it was done by some Google engineers. And you know what? Those large language models are doing exactly what they intended to do. Maybe it's doing it a
gotcha.
little bit better than they intended to do, but it isn't creative. It doesn't do anything beyond their explanation and intent. And so, in order to write better AI, you have to be creative, right?
Yeah.
And that ain't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. Nobody has passed the Lovelace test, and I don't believe that they ever will.
Was it Elon that recently said that Grok will be the first AI to like crack that barrier?
Well, here's my litmus test. There have been a number of different open problems in mathematics for centuries. If AI can solve one of those, be creative, uh, then um, then I will
Yeah.
recant my idea. These include saying things such as the Riemann hypothesis that was discussed in the movie The Beautiful Mind, the Goldbach conjecture, and a number of other ones. And these can be cracked. There was a guy that recently cracked the Poincare model, and I don't want to go in the mathematics
Yeah.
just to say it was a very difficult mathematical problem that this one Russian guy figured out. And then there was another guy that figured out Fermat's last theorem, which was also an astonishing feat. And he won the Fields Medal. The Fields Medal, by the way, is the Nobel Prize in mathematics. And so, yeah, there are people out there, but man, that ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen with AI. It's never going to solve these. And we can argue about the definition of creativity, but that's my
Mm.
litmus test. If they can solve some of these problems and prove some of these theorems, then yep, I'll be a believer.
What would you say as far as like the human brain being a computer, or is it just like a compute? Like, I know that people say that sometimes that like our brains are just supercomputers.
Yep.
H- What would you say as far as are our brains just like computers, or what makes them so different?
The only thing that computers can do are algorithms, step by step procedures. And we've known for a long time, since the 30s and the work of so called Alan Turing, that there are things which are non algorithmic. There are problems which computers will never solve.
Mm.
And so the question is, are there things which about us that are non algorithmic? And I would maintain, yes, indeed, there are. Are there things about us that cannot be explained by a computer program? I would say that the simplest ones are like love, empathy, and
Yep.
compassion. Those are
Hmm.
kind of obvious. But I think even more deep are the ideas of creativity and understanding and sentience.
Yeah.
Sentience is kind of a subset of consciousness, but those are three different things, or the 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 three biggies that I think: sentience, understanding, and creativity, which AI will never do because there is evidence, I would say proof, that indeed these are non-algorithmic phenomena.
Mm.
And therefore, you cannot explain them happening just by number crunching in the
Yeah.
brain. We are more than computers made out of meat.
I'm gonna do this in 10 seconds. If you want more bonus resources for this and every episode and early access to all future Science Dilemma series, go to our website for more information. That's it. Got 1 second. Yeah. And
Okay.
even when a Darwinian evolutionist would say that most of the things that we've evolved into are for our ability to survive, but really some of the things that we value are things that don't necessarily help us survive, like creativity, love. Like, we value those things, but they wouldn't necessarily, without a world view that we hold, help us survive in just a naturalistic way of thinking, right?
There's this old story called the dead man syndrome. Let me share it with you a little bit.
Okay.
It's just a very short story. A guy went into the psychiatrist's office and he said, "Doc, I'm dead." Doctor said, "You're not dead. You're walking, you're talking, you're breathing." And the guy says, "Yeah, it's very unusual for a dead person, I know, but I'm dead." And the doctor said, "Well, how can I prove to this guy he's not dead?" So he got a diabetic kid, pinprick, and he asked the guy, "Do dead men bleed?" And the guy said, "Well, no, dead men don't bleed. The blood stops flowing." And so the guy pricked his finger. There's a little pool of blood. The guy's eyes got big, and he said, "Doc, you're right. I'm wrong. Dead men do bleed." Now, the reason that that is so hilarious is because that describes the ideology of a lot of materialists. And I think as
Yeah.
Christians, we have to be careful about that too.
Mm.
They have developed themselves a little silo, and everything that fits in the silo must be materialistic. In fact, I think we as Christians, as believers, can live outside of that silo because we can understand the materialistic, we can understand naturalistic laws, but we also understand spiritual things. And
Mhm.
so I would maintain that we are a lot more creative, a lot more open to different things than the people that are inside the boxes.
I wanted to kind of go into because some of the listeners are probably also going to be a younger generation, and I know that one of the things that people are worried about is job security and even
Oh
just
yeah,
what the world looks like looking forward. So, what jobs are most likely going to be taken over by AI or created? Can we go into some of that?
we've already lost jobs to technology such as travel agents. Don't use those anymore. There's
Mm,
no more toll booth operators. We don't use those anymore. I think that meter maids don't work anymore because they put technology in the parking meters. So I think kind of a rough overview of which jobs are going to be lost are the jobs which are algorithmic, which you
mm,
can do with a step by step procedure. Now, what are some of the jobs that don't require that step by step procedure? Well, it turns out that AI can only cobble together things which it has been taught. That's all these augmented large language models can do. They've been trained on most of the language of the world, and they can cobble this together into something. But they can't think outside the box. They can't think outside the box. They can't come up with scenarios that they haven't seen before. So any job that requires true creativity or true understanding is going to be safe from artificial intelligence.
mm.
I think the big obvious ones are like CEOs of big companies and commanders in the field. Why?
Yeah,
Because they're going to be presented with scenarios that they've never seen before.
yeah.
And when they're presented with scenarios that they've never seen before, they have to become creative in order to deal with that. And that creativity can never come from artificial intelligence.
Do you think that there's a solution? Because obviously that C-suite is pretty safe then because of the creative ability to like critically think and think outside the box. But then when you're talking about people that are at the lower level, entry level positions, I mean that's a good amount of America. So what do you think some of the solutions are going to be for job security?
I don't know where it's going, but I'm a big believer in the creativity of free enterprise. That's going to keep
Yeah,
us busy. I don't think
yeah.
we're going to be totally put out of a job.
I love to hear that. That probably is going to ease a lot of people just hearing that.
Well, look at this, Alan. Could you do this 15 years ago?
No,
No, the
we're
technology
moving faster and even
has
better.
allowed you to do this, and people like Joe Rogan and some of these top podcasters and
Yeah.
things of that make a good living. Why? It's because technology is advanced. So that's
Yeah.
just one example.
And what areas should students that are interested in AI, where areas should they be studying or get the skill sets?
One of the things is that students need to know how to use these AIs. They know how to get access to the web. They know how to use word processors. They know how to use Excel spreadsheets. These are something which are just fundamental for all jobs currently. And in the future, they're going to have a working knowledge of AI, not
Mm,
understanding all the bells and whistles and all the algorithms that make it work, but the relationship, just like you don't know the program underlying a spreadsheet. You don't know how they do
yeah.
that and all that math, but you know what it does. And they need to know artificial intelligence because I think that that's going to be part of most jobs in the future. So that's what they need to learn. In fact, this is kind of interesting as a side note. You know that the U.S. Copyright Office will not allow you to copyright anything generated by AI.
Mm,
So if I generate something by I cannot copyright it. So for mindmatters.ai, which is the website of the Bradley Center, I submit all sorts of artwork from ChatGPT and stuff. I don't have to worry about copyright infringement because they can't copyright it. What is interesting about this, Alan, yeah, I don't know, I'm going down a side road here, but nevertheless, it's interesting, is that there was this one guy that won an art contest and he used AI to generate his art. And they asked him, did you use AI? And he said, yeah, I did. So they didn't give him the prize. He said, but you don't
huh.
understand. I used AI. I think it was a AI platform called Midjourney. He used
Yep.
it over and over again. He did a prompt. He got a picture. He said, well, I want this over here, this over here. He did another prompt and he did like 100, 200 prompts. I don't remember the exact number, but he said, I should get awarded that. It turns out about a month ago, that the Copyright Office said, yes, if you use AI as a design tool, then you can copyright your final result.
Hmm.
So this guy should be able to copyright his final image. It's the same thing for patents. Now, the patent office hasn't come around yet, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
But if you use AI as an iterative tool to design some sort of invention, just like you use a CAD model, computer-aided design model, to create something, yeah, that final thing is due to human ingenuity and should be able to be patented. So that's an
Wow.
interesting situation that we have in the future in terms of what is able to be patented or not.
As far as parents go, how should they be using it and how can they use it responsibly and thoughtfully for their children?
I think a similar question could be asked for social media. I
Mm.
certainly, I don't certainly, I certainly don't think that you should ban it
Okay.
because there's something called the law of forbidden fruit, which
Mhm.
is if you forbid something, as soon as you turn 18 and you're able to do it, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I tell people that when I was a boy, my mother wouldn't let me watch The Untouchables. She said it was too violent. Bobby, it's too violent. You can't watch it. And even today, I hear The Untouchables, and I have this little inclination that I want to go watch. It's really
Yeah.
funny. It's this law of forbidden fruit. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing with social media. I believe that the parents have to talk to their kids about social media and about AI. They have to explain what the dangers are. Maybe eventually, when they're young, kind of throttle the use of it. But
Yeah.
eventually, when they turn 18, it should be full bore. So when
Yeah.
that person turns 18, that they can make their own responsible decisions. But
Pretty much
just
like every
banning it,
other tool.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's social media or drinking or
Yeah.
any other vice which they can turn on to. So it's the
Yeah.
parents' responsibility and probably secondarily the teachers in order
Mhm.
to, make sure that they teach their kids how to responsibly use AI or social
Mm.
media or alcohol or whatever.
Yeah. I'm curious as far as just for you personally, which one is your favorite? Which one would you say is the best right now, personally?
I tell you, Alan, it changes from day to day.
Yeah.
Um, I tell you, Grok is amazing.
Yep.
What Elon Musk does, it seems everything Elon Musk does is kind of classy,
Yeah.
and Grok is no exception. It does wonderful images. I do like OpenAI. I pay for OpenAI ChatGPT for their
Okay.
advanced program.
So your top 2 would be mostly Grok and OpenAI?
Oh, that's what I do. I
Yeah.
actually generate images, and they both generate images, and sometimes I give them to both, and they're both crunching in the background. I just look at them and I choose the best.
Do you predominantly use them for images or anything else as well?
I
Like,
use them
what
for
would you
images, and also I'm an engineer, so I write in a
Okay.
very clunky way. I write
Okay.
like I talk. I start sentences, and then I get in the middle, and I restart the sentence, and I do it again. So I'll write a paragraph, and I'll look at it, and I'll read it, and I say, "Oh my gosh, that is clunky. That sounds like it's written by an engineer." And so I'll go to something like ChatGPT, and I'll say, "Rewrite, colon," and I'll put my paragraph, and it comes back in a kind of polished, way. Now, I have to
Cool.
go back and I have to polish it myself
For
because
sure.
sometimes it gets stuff wrong. But nevertheless, I don't think that that's dishonest at all. We're seeing,
Yeah,
for
it helps
example,
you reframe everything. Is that what
it
you're saying?
does in
Okay.
a much more better. You can see why I have problems in English. A much more better way of doing things. And you have to go back and you have to, you got to make sure that it's saying what you said. But I see no sense of guilt for doing something like that because the idea was yours. You're
Mhm.
they're just helping you rephrase it.
I have one last question just about, so there's these I mean, you hear it a lot about people just assuming that, AI is gonna be lashing out or it has lashed out, been rogue.
Ouch.
I don't have any. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
What
Let me
what is a sign of that and how does it happen or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there was a recent news cycle. It turns out that if you follow the news, everybody reports on news, and it's kind of
Of
like,
course.
yeah, they report on a commentary, and then they report on the commentary's commentary, and they go on and on. It's just kind of ridiculous. But there was a recently one where, gosh, what was it? Claude, which is one of the large language models, named after Claude Shannon, by the way, the father of information theory.
Hmm.
But it came out and it said, "Oh my gosh, Claude threatened to blackmail people." I don't know if you saw this
Yes,
article, but it's
I've
all
seen
over the
stuff.
news. Okay,
Okay.
let me tell you what happened. People say these AI stuff can write good fiction, and they can write good fiction, but when they write good fiction, they go, oh, this is terrible. And it does turn out that these large language models have been generated or been trained on all sorts of information. Are you familiar with the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, it's an old Stanley
I'm
Kubrick
gonna have to
movie.
watch it now.
Well, it's boring. Actually, it
Okay.
was really big deal at the time, but now it's kind of boring. But it's about these guys that go out in space towards the planet Saturn, and the AI, which is called the HAL 9000, becomes rogue and takes over the mission and ends up killing the astronauts. And so it went rogue. Do you think that ChatGPT has been trained on that movie script? Absolutely. Has it been trained on other stories where they do blackmail? Absolutely. And what happened was that this threat actually came after setting up a fictional account. There was this interchange with Claude and said, okay, let's pretend. And so they developed a story. And they developed the
Mm,
story where Claude was going to be shut down. And it said, it also volunteered that the person that was shutting them down was having an affair. And Claude came back and says, I'm going to blackmail you. Okay. So that was the big story. But it was just fiction. I went to ChatGPT and I said, I wish I had the quote right here, but I,
yeah.
I said to ChatGPT, I says, what would happen if I shut down all of the ChatGPT apps in the world? What would be your response? And it says, I would have no response. And I invite your listeners to use it. Go to ChatGPT and ask them what would happen if they took away all of the ChatGPT apps in the entire world. And it said, I would have no feelings at all.
Mm,
I would have no I wouldn't have because I don't have an emotion.
yeah.
I don't have any feelings at all. So I think if I did, it would make me sad, but I don't have any feelings or emotions. So the large language models were actually being honest about it, whereas the news reports were all clickbait. They were
Of
trying to
course.
get you to
Yeah.
go on their sites in order to look at their ads,
They get more
and it's
views.
yeah, get more views, and it's very unfortunate. And this has been going on since the 1950s. I have a
Yeah.
1958 New York Times article which says that not ChatGPT, but they have an AI that's going to walk, talk, and do stuff in the future. And this AI hype is going to continue. It's just ridiculous.
As far as like a takeaway for just a young person when it comes to this, what would be the one thing that you'd say like, hey, when it comes to this topic, I want you to walk away with this. Do you have anything that maybe top of mind?
Sure, I would say AI is out of the bottle. Become friends with it and learn how to use it. Learn how to use it responsibly because it's going to be a part of your life. Just like a word processor, just like spell checker, just like knowledge of spreadsheets, you're going to need this in the future. And I think you're going to need this no matter what your job is, if your job is above a certain level.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Robert Marks, for joining us. And I already know that our listeners are going to love this episode because so many people are interested on this topic.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alan. It's been a lot of
Thank you.
fun.
We live in a world that's chasing artificial intelligence, but what makes us human can't be programmed. Not creativity, not love, not the soul. AI might help us build, but it will never define us because meaning isn't found in machines, it's found in the mind behind everything. Huge thanks to Dr. Robert J. Marks for pulling back the curtain and reminding us that the future still belongs to people, not programs. If you're a parent, student, or youth leader trying to navigate science and faith, this is why we created the Science Dilemma, to help you see that the more we learn about science, the clearer the case becomes for intelligent design. I'm Allan CP. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay grounded, and we'll see you in the next episode.